Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a really chilling criminal investigation coming out of Hyderabad. What initially looked like a completely normal, albeit tragic, sudden medical emergency turned out to be something much darker. We're going to look at how a supposedly perfect domestic cover-up was systematically taken apart by incredibly sharp police work. By the end of this, you'll see exactly how authorities used digital footprints and hard evidence to expose a violent conspiracy that was hidden right behind closed doors. Okay, so let's set the scene. This whole thing started with a very standard-sounding complaint filed at the Medipelli police station by a 36-year-old woman. She told police that she had just found her husband unconscious in the washroom of their house. The story presented to the family and to the cops was a sudden, heartbreaking medical tragedy, specifically a massive heart attack. They rushed the victim to a government hospital in Malkajgiri, but he was formally declared dead. I mean, at first glance, it really just looked like a devastating, totally natural family tragedy. Now, before we get into how that initial story completely unraveled, let's take a second to establish who we're actually talking about here. The victim was a 45-year-old man living in the Bodapal area of Hyderabad. He was a logistics manager at a private university. He had a solid career, a home, a whole life that just ended abruptly on December 11th. It's really important to ground ourselves in these facts, right? Because it reminds us that behind all the police reports and the data, there's a real person whose family thought they were grieving a simple medical emergency. They had absolutely no idea about the violent truth that was about to come to light. But here is where things take a massive turn. During the routine medical procedures that always follow a sudden death, investigators noticed something that just didn't add up. They found suspicious physical injuries on the victim's body. We're talking unexplained marks and trauma, specifically on his cheek and his neck. And, well, this is the exact moment the rug gets pulled out from under the wife's fabricated story. A heart attack simply doesn't leave traumatic bruising on a man's neck, so that physical evidence immediately threw up a huge red flag for the police, triggering a much more skeptical look into what really went down inside that house. As soon as natural causes were officially ruled out, the police didn't have to look very far. They pivoted their focus inward, straight toward the household. The investigation quickly identified 3 key suspects, all of whom were later arrested. First, you have the 36-year-old wife, who authorities labeled as the prime accused. Then, there's a 22-year-old construction worker who police identified as her paramour. And finally, a third accomplice who was apparently brought in to help. It became clear very fast that this wasn't some random break-in or spontaneous crime of passion. It was a coordinated, premeditated murder by people intimately connected to the victim. So you might be wondering what actually sparked this. How does a daily routine escalate into a premeditated murder? Well, the catalyst was discovery. According to the police, the wife was having an extramarital affair with the 22-year-old construction worker. Eventually, the logistics manager started getting suspicious. He began questioning his wife, confronting her, and constantly asking about the affair. And rather than deal with the fallout of the relationship being exposed, the wife and her paramour made a horrifying choice. They conspired to completely eliminate the husband. Let's actually walk through the timeline of December 11th, because seeing it step by step is incredibly disturbing. It starts normally enough. The logistics manager returns home after a typical day at work, but a trap is already waiting for him. Almost immediately upon walking in, the second and third accused ambush and physically assault him. And this next detail is just chilling. While he is being beaten, his own wife restrains his legs so he can't fight back or escape. Finally, the paramour steps in to deliver the fatal blow. It was a highly coordinated, multi-person ambush right there in his own living space. And the weapon they used adds a whole other layer to this. They didn't bring in some highly sophisticated tool. The victim was actually strangled with scarves, specifically chunnis, which are traditional garments you'd find in practically any South Asian household. By taking a completely ordinary, everyday piece of clothing and weaponizing it, it shows this brutal improvisation, but also a very clear, calculated intent to kill him quietly. It really underscores just how fast a safe domestic setting was turned into a murder scene. Now, the crime obviously didn't end when the victim died. To conceal the crime, the group took cold, incredibly methodical steps to stage the scene. Step 1. They actually changed the victim's clothes after the murder to hide the fact that there had been a massive physical struggle. Step 2. They gathered up the scarves and other incriminating articles and disposed of them, actively trying to destroy the physical evidence. And Step 3. They put on a performance. They lied straight to the grieving relatives about him collapsing, and then the wife boldly walked into the police station to file a completely false report. So, if they staged the scene, changed the clothes, and hid the weapons, how did they get caught? This is where forensic evidence and technical analysis come into play. The police didn't just take the wife's word for it, they went straight to the tape. They heavily relied on CCTV footage from the surrounding neighborhood, alongside technical data like cell phone tower pings. This tech allowed them to bypass all the lies, reconstruct exactly who entered and exited the house that afternoon, verify the real timelines, and completely dismantle the fabricated alibi. The conspirators thought they were hidden, but the cameras were watching the whole time. Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought for today. We just traced a domestic conspiracy where the perpetrators went to insane lengths to stage a natural death. They changed the clothes, destroyed the evidence, and confidently lied to the police. Honestly, a couple of decades ago, this cover-up probably would have worked. But today, with modern CCTV footage everywhere, unerasable digital footprints, and advanced forensics constantly tracking our movements, it makes you wonder, is the perfect crime officially a thing of the past? It's a fascinating, if somewhat eerie reminder that the truth almost always leaves a trail. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. I hope this deep dive gave you a much clearer understanding of how this investigation unfolded, and we'll see you next time.